Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where today we have a little bit of a potential curveball. I'm considering selling my AMG GT R Roadster. Now I've owned this Shmeemobile for something like a year and a half, just over a year and a half. I've already driven it about 6,600 miles, and in fact I am about to depart on a little adventure with it because there's something I'd like to change in Germany, and I'll talk a little bit more about that today. And I know what you're thinking, why would I sell this car? It's my daily usable supercar, we could say, and in fact I've had many good miles with it to date. But there are a few other things I'd like to discuss today, and I make no secret that I'm a big AMG fan. I've owned quite a few of them recently, and quite a few AMG GT models, of which the GT R Roadster, while it's not a halo, it's not the GT Black Series or the GT R Pro, is a wonderful limited car. There are only 750 of them. This one is quite bespoke with some of the things that we've done to it, but there's a lot else going on, and today we're going to talk all about it. Now, first things first, to those of you who say, how dare I want to sell a car? It's a year and a half old. I picked it up, I think, in November 2020, and that was already a little bit delayed because of everything that was going on. By this point, I should, in theory, have already owned it for 2 years, in fact, so it must be a year and 8 months or something like that. And having owned the original AMG GTR, the Beast of the Black Hell as we nicknamed it, but the Beast of the Green Hell as it was launched, I then put in my order for the GTR Pro, at which point they released the Roadster, which, to be honest, I didn't expect, and I don't know why I didn't expect it, because they already made the GT Roadster, the GTS Roadster, and the GTC Roadster, so it was quite logical they would do a GTR Roadster. So I popped my name into the hat, picked up the car in the hyacinth red, put the options including the black wheels, the yellow brake calipers, and did some upgrades to the interior. Since then, enjoyed the car. Obviously, it's been a funny time. We did the Roster tour, you might remember, because so many people autocorrect Roadster to Roster. It's a funny internal joke that we kind of have, and took it all the way down to Italy, through Germany, drove it top speed with the roof down. I've driven this car at 200 miles an hour with the roof down, which was really quite a cool experience. I'm not going to lie, but things happen, right? Things change, times change, circumstances change, and I'm not going to lie. As you might have seen from the Shmuseum channel, we have expanded beyond the back wall here in the garage. So this side is very much the storage and the museum side, shall we say. The side where things look pretty, things are clean, things are tidy, the cars are all nicely on display, we have the car lifts, and there are even more of them that are about to go in as well. And the other side is going to be more the projects, the working on cars, and some other things that are just here, short-term basis, who knows what, but also new cars. To be honest, when I picked up my Ferrari SF90 Stradale, I was a little bit anxious that something might need to depart at the time. And I'd recently sold the G-Wagon because values were so high, the Taycan, the M3, and the Yaris, all for pretty much similar reasons, but the SF90 came in, the DBS came in, the GTC4 Lusso came in, and a few other cars arrived. And obviously I was aware of the imminent expenses that were about to be incurred, including the additional property, also the Zenvo. Now the Zenvo is a very expensive car, and I don't particularly fancy selling any of these. So what I was going to say was, when the SF90 arrived, I thought perhaps if I was logical about this, I should sell one of the expensive cars, and I couldn't bring myself to, so I didn't sell anything like the STO or something like that. Still have the STO. Obviously my GT Black Series is off on travels. The SLS Black Series is going to be back very soon, and I didn't want to let them go. But now with the Zenvo arriving, that's a whole lot of money. I'm not going to lie. It's a very expensive car, but I don't want to sell the GT and I don't want to sell the Senna. So I have to kind of think about this a little bit realistically, and maybe that means a couple of things do have to head on out, because I have some other things, projects, businesses, that require a little bit of a cash injection as well. And while I would love to keep every single car that I ever buy, it's not possible. It's not realistic. So the GT R Roadster is a car that I honestly think is fabulous, but it's also a car, and I'm sorry if this is a bit cliche to say, that happens to be worth quite a lot of money in the current market. It's worth, I think, at least what I paid for it. It's that kind of ballpark. So it gets me thinking, you know, I've had some fun with this, I've done some good miles with the car, is it perhaps time to sell it? And I thought I'd keep it for probably a little bit longer than this would mean, shy of 2 years, I thought I'd have it for at least 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. I'm not the guy who, as you know, gets a car, does 0 miles with it, flips it, sells it like that. I bought the car intending to use it, and we've done a few things with it. Obviously, it's parked here with the roof up. I think if I just do that with the key, the roof will open itself. Magic, just like that, holding the key. The biggest thing that we did inside here is to have fitted these bucket seats. The seats from AMG that I really like. Got these done at Opus in Germany, and didn't just install the seats, but they're also hooked up with the heated seat control as well. They have heated filaments in the base and in the backrest, which work with the OEM buttons in the central tunnel. They look magnificent. They're the seats from the GTR Coupe, and those weren't actually available in the Roadster. In the Roadster, you could only have the AMG performance seats, which I actually still have for this car as well. Now, whether I sell the car or not, this is something I've been considering for a while with regards to the seats, is that I happen to have another car that these seats can go directly in, and the seats are really expensive, so I don't want to buy another set if I don't need to buy them. Luckily, I picked these up more than 2 years ago. I think about the time I ordered this car, I got these seats. Those can, if we come this way, by the way, they're the same seat that's also in the GT Black Series, the same seat that's in the SLS Black Series, and it's the same seat that you could order from factory in the C63 Black Series. And mine, while it does have the aero kit on the exterior with the carbon flicks and the carbon wing at the back, it doesn't have the full interior. And I would quite like, I know I've talked a lot about doing the paint and all sorts of other things with that car, but I'd quite like to do up the interior, to do the rear seat delete, to give it the buckets up front. And given I own a set of buckets, you can probably see where I'm going with this. It would be fairly logical and financially sensible to take these out of the Roadster, pop them in the C, put the original seats back in here, and then maybe say farewell to this car. So that is the intention. That's why I'm driving it over to Germany. I'm going to take it back to visit my friends at Opus, Lucas and the team over there, because it's not a simple swap. It's not like you just unplug everything and swap it over. You actually have to use a full, I can't think what the device is called, but you have to read into the programming and go through all of that to change it. I don't even think I know anywhere here in the UK that could do it, because there's a peculiarity with this. It's not just the Mercedes entry system. It's way more complex than that, to make sure that they swap back in terms of airbags and in terms of the controls for the steering wheel, because the electric steering column is actually adjusted from the ECU for the seats. And if you don't have the electric seats, you get stuck with a steering wheel that you probably couldn't move. We made it work on this. Opus are amazing at stuff like that. They've made it all work, made it all do exactly what it was supposed to do. And obviously I've enjoyed driving it an awful lot. That feeling of riding in a car with bucket seats open, in a 2-seat front mid-engine car with a wing on the back, I love it. There aren't many things out there like that. This and front engine cars, F-Type with a wing, not many more with a wing on the back. Not many more at all. Well, SLS, obviously. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to be without an AMG GT, and probably one of the surprises here, one of the things that really took me by surprise, is that the GT Black Series is a much more usable everyday car than I expected. The biggest thing that took me by surprise is the adaptive suspension in the GT Black Series is fantastic. The car is obviously more practical as a coupe than it is as a Roadster. You get a bit of luggage space back here, and you know, we've squeezed some stuff in for road trips and things, and to be honest, for a convertible car, that's not too bad. You can fit in 2 carry-on flight cases. In fact, you can actually just fit them this way. So you can have 2 flight cases here and some small soft bags on either side, which makes it all work quite well if you want to be taking some luggage on the road with you. But the coupe is obviously more practical in comparison. It's a wonderful car, and this probably sounds a little bit like a sales pitch for the car, which wasn't really the intention. But the problem for me is, problem is relative, is that with the Zenvo arriving, with everything else here, I've got to be realistic. I've got to be realistic, and I've got to say farewell to something. So that's going to be the choice. The question, the other thing that I haven't actually mentioned in terms of daily usable supercar, GT R Roadster, I've been driving this, as I spoke about recently. I've been driving this so much as my daily supercar. It does the job amazingly. And I know that makes no sense, because minimal luggage capacity, very expensive. but it's wonderful. It's so nice. I really, really like the SF90 Stradale. And you might remember when I ordered the SF90 Stradale originally, I talked about this. I ordered it way back, I think in summer 2019, decided it was going to be too much of a commitment for me because, well, I knew lots of other things that were in the works. Went and drove one in early 2021 and decided, yeah, it had to happen. So I bought that very much as a car for me because I love it, because it's absolutely wonderful. A daily driver supercar with 1,000 horsepower, which makes no sense. So the GT R Roadster is in some ways surplus to requirements. I know lots of the cars are surplus to requirements. It doesn't make sense. This isn't about cars that I need in the garage. This is about cars that I enjoy collecting, that I believe in as well for the future, that I just want to keep enjoying and owning and sharing the experiences with. So I'm not entirely sure where this is going to sit, but for the minute, let's get it started. Head out for a quick little drive. We'll talk a bit more about this. Obviously, for a drive, we have to have the roof down. It is a lovely summer evening, although a little bit overcast, but nonetheless, it's 25 degrees Celsius. It is perfect for the occasion, and this is where this car truly excels, to be honest. It is quite firm, and it doesn't sound particularly fantastic. I mean, open road down to first gear just because. It's not going to win any awards for being the best sounding car ever because OPFs and regulations, basically. But I've never made the exhaust in here spectacularly loud because it's a daily. It's a car to enjoy and to drive and to cruise with, rather than, say, the GT Black Series, which is fun to have a little bit more sound and emotion out of. But one of the reasons all of this conversation is quite relevant is quite hard to explain, and that's to do with finance. And I think I need to do a full video update, probably on the Shmeemuseum channel, about finance across the fleet, because with each car I tend to do it in different ways depending on the car. And obviously when it comes to selling a car, a big question is to do with equity. Now, with the Zenvo being imminent and considering quite how expensive it is, one thing I've actually been doing is refinancing some of my older cars, like the Ford GT, which is actually about to be 4 years old and at the end of its previous term, and even the SLS Black Series, which I actually owned outright. Porsche going the other way. Yeah, it was a turbo. It was actually a 992 Turbo S. Whereas something like the GT Black Series, I still own outright and is traveling around the world at the moment because it just makes it a lot less complicated when it's entirely, you know, my car at the end of the day and it's insured and easy and simple and no questions, you know, behind the back of it. But obviously, this is a car that I bought 2 years ago. I put in a pretty hefty deposit, actually, on the financing behind it, and have paid off quite a lot in the time since because it had a fairly low residual, something I had set up. And that means that if I am to sell it now, I've actually got quite a lot of equity to pull out of it, which obviously helps putting towards other projects, the build of the garage, the workshop, the mezzanine, the office, and all of that kind of thing, which helps quite. Oh, that was nice. That downshift crack. I know that this road is about to be closed in front of us, which is going to be less than ideal. Yeah, just up here. But I tell you what, as you're probably telling from the video, this thing is really, really bumpy. It's a very, very firm ride. And in fact, I'm going to spin it round. Four-wheel steering, very, very tight turning circle. That's one thing that's mega about it. And back on the road again. It gets a move nicely. I was hoping we might get some more downshift cracks. So there's more to it than just, hey, which car is the one that I'm going to sell? Because obviously, while they have outright values, they also have different values to me, which is dictated by the market, dictated by the specific finance structure that I have behind the car. And I think it would be nice to go through this in more detail and explain more about that. So stay tuned maybe for something, you know, on that front. But in general terms, perhaps I'm just not using this car as much as I thought I might. If you rewind the clock back probably a year or so, when it was still fairly new, obviously we still had restrictions in terms of where we could go and travel and that kind of thing. But I haven't driven it as much since then as I anticipated. And because of that, it's all, you know, it's not a binary thing. This isn't a 1 or a 0, keep it, buy it. It's a sliding scale of different factors of how frequently you drive the car, the value of the car, the funding of the car, the use obviously as well on the channel here making videos. I'm not going to beat about the bush, that is certainly an element with some of the cars. Some things I certainly do, let's say, purely for myself. Some things there's definitely a video and a business plan behind, as I was speaking about recently with Damon from Daily Driven Exotics, and that does have an impact. That is a factor, certainly, in making choices and making decisions. And the GT R Roadster, you could probably argue, is just a bit surplus to requirements. You know, at the time that I ordered this, I didn't yet have an allocation for the GT Black Series, I didn't have the SLS Black Series, and I certainly wasn't yet thinking about buying a C63 Black Series. I had my G63 and I had my GTR Pro. That was it. So things are different now, and I'm certainly not about to sell any of the Black Series cars. The GT for obvious reasons, the SLS for obvious reasons, and the C because I still want to make it into my perfect C and keep it in the collection with those. So it's complicated. I do very much enjoy driving this car, but probably not as much with the SF90 in the garage as I once did. Even though it is my only car of exactly this nature, you know, front mid convertible. The V8 Vantage Roadster doesn't really count because it's 12, 13 years old and it's a bit different. And the 675 LT Spider is obviously a mid-engine supercar convertible. The 296 GTS probably with a lot of storage space up front and with a lot of usability in the same way that the SF90 does with the eDrive and the hybrid system, will probably be the successor in my garage to this. I think the 296 GTS basically is going to tick all the boxes of what I use this for. So maybe I'm just convincing myself here. I don't really know. I haven't directly thought about it like that. But as you can tell, there are a lot more factors to this than initially meet the eye. And we're back at the Shmeemuseum after a dinner stop and an extended evening drive, enjoying the GT R Roadster. And excuse me for a very quick sales pitch, but if anybody out there is interested in this car, exactly as it is right now, with the bucket seats in situ, it's only actually available like this, if I'm selling it, until the morning after this video goes live. So about 15 hours from when this goes live, because that's when the process to swap them over begins, and then I'll basically reevaluate and rethink everything. So if I have to put a price on it, £155,000 GBP, UK car, right-hand drive, not for export, so UK only in the case of this one, taxes paid, etc., all ready and good to go. Now, a few quick words about the spec of this car, because it's quite interesting, as I've talked a lot about this with the GT Black Series and the fact that I resprayed it in Solar Beam. It was actually the same with the GT R Roadster as it was also on the Pro, that you only had a selected limited number of colours. So I think it was 8, 9 or 10, a couple of blacks, greys, silvers, diamond white, and then a few colours. And I tend to go for a car in an actual paint colour as opposed to grayscale, and those options were Brilliant Blue or Brilliant Blue Magno, and I didn't really at the time want to do another blue car, and Green Hell Magno, the satin green, which I did actually think about but chose or thought would be a little bit overkill really for a convertible, so I went with the Hyacinth Red, even though I'm not normally the biggest fan of red cars, and I know that's slightly ironic when one of my favourite cars is the Ford GT in the lovely liquid red, but I tend to find red a bit out there in some ways. I prefer blue cars, purple cars, or even very brightly coloured cars. Red just seems to create different attitudes on the road. Maybe that's a topic for another day. But I went with Hyacinth Red because I had in my mind the vision of seeing this car with the hope that I would get a GT Black Series in Solar Beam. At the time, I certainly didn't think it would need a respray, and then the idea of also doing a Mystic Blue SLS Black Series. And by the way, thinking of the Solar Beam, that's one of the reasons why I went with the yellow calipers. So the red with the yellow would look really cool with the yellow on the GT Black Series, maybe with some red or something. Who knew at the time, because obviously it hadn't yet been introduced. So that was one of the reasons why I went with the spec exactly as you see it here. Even though we have a garage of Skittles in all sorts of colours, I'm sure there'll be another red car at some point. But reality check, as I said earlier, the expansion of the Shmeemuseum through to the other side, the build of the mezzanine, the Zenvo arriving, and some big expenses, especially having bought the, well, all in the last 12 months, the SF90, the STO, the GT Black Series, and a couple of other cars as well. So something kind of has to give, and I look around and I think about this and ponder, but there are so many cars I just don't want to sell and don't want to let go. Maybe the STO because it's obviously worth so much at the moment, values are very high, but again, I want to enjoy that car a whole lot more. It's not ready to go yet. Perhaps over on this side, the DBS maybe, you know, a recent acquisition, but one that I haven't completely gelled with yet, so perhaps maybe that at some point. I don't really know. The GT R Roadster kind of had a bit of its purpose negated by the fact that the GT Black Series is such a fantastic, let's say, everyday car, such a fantastic car to drive in normal environments when I had thought it was going to be a little bit stiffer, more like the GT R Pro. The obvious sad side effect from a garage point of view is by selling this car, I would lose that convertible front engine, laid back GT cruise experience. Although the 296 GTS, I honestly think is going to come very close to what this offers, very, very close. But the reality is, like I said, I kind of should sell a car or two. I should sell a car or two. So it's a difficult decision, despite letting a few cars go earlier in the year. It's just a very big financial commitment to step up to the Zenvo. It's a very, very big financial commitment, requires a lot of money, but I think I should at some point soon talk about the finances in a bit more detail. So maybe that's one for an update on the Shmeemuseum channel. As I mentioned, please do subscribe to our channel to go behind the scenes more in the garage if you haven't already. We're having quite a lot of fun over there. So big thanks to all of you who have been subscribed, 124,000 people at this point, and over 10 million views already, which is super, super cool as well. Anyway, it would be sad to see it go, but I do have a big adventure planned with the car imminently. So it'll jump up from 6,700 miles or so to about 1,000 more, which is no bad thing. And maybe after that, I'll change my mind. We shall see. For now though, I think that is all. I've enjoyed the drive out with the car today and hopefully explained a little bit more behind the story with this car and what I'm thinking for what happens next. That's it for now though. Thank you very much for watching, as always guys, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.